Hello, and welcome to the Citrix AI Hotsheet podcast. My name is Brian Madden. I'm joined by my co-host and Citrix colleague, Dave Brear. We are recording this on the 19th of June, 2026. You know, when we started the show in our first episode, I kind of said that the show came from Dave. You and I had our one-on-one meetings, and it was so interesting and so fun. And we said we should just record these. And in fact, I haven't seen you since last month. This is literally our one-on-one that we're recording.
Yeah, absolutely. I got everything I was looking for from the last episode in that regard. It's like exactly that. The conversations we were having, just capturing those. I think it was a good idea.
Well, and so, yeah, I've been watching. What have you been up to in the past month? You've been posting on LinkedIn quite often, and you're in it.
Yeah, indeed. I was going to say, it doesn't seem like a long time since we last caught up, but actually it's been a while. And for the most part, I guess all the stuff we've been talking about, I've been just using it. My system has been running. I've been working in this way, and I guess we have some interesting things to talk about a little bit later about those.
Yeah, his system. This is the Dave Brear second brain. I tell everyone, everyone knows me as the second brain guy, and I'm like, you got to meet Dave. Dave's the one who showed me this, blew my mind, and changed my perception on what the future of work looks like. And so with that, let's kind of jump right into our first topic because, something I did. So first of all, this is episode 3 of the Citrix AI Hotsheet. Dave and I last met a month ago for episode 1. Episode 2 was, I don't know if I can call it a special edition because it was just our second one, but I had been traveling around here in Europe giving talks recently. And I spoke at the EUC Tech Cruise in Norway a couple of weeks ago. Earlier this week, I spoke at a Dan Office IT event in Denmark. And in all these events, I was talking about like the future of end user computing, the future of Citrix. I had a topic that's called the last chapter of EUC. And that talk, I actually posted a version of that talk. So I really liked the talk and I thought it should go like more than just the people who were in the room. So when I got home from one of those speeches, I sat in my office here and recorded that and then published that as episode 2 of the podcast. So that episode, along with all episodes, if you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple, you can also watch us on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, there's audio-only versions available. But one of the blog posts I did this month on the Citrix blog, and something I was talking about was this roadmap I had created. About a year ago, I wrote an article. It was called "The 7 Stages of Human AI Interaction." What did I call that? The collaboration.
Collaboration.
And so, yeah, like basically, as an individual worker, how do you use AI, and then as you get better with AI skills, as AI technologies mature, as the AI models get better, the way that you use and interact with AI, it just changes over time. And I'm not going to go through that whole step-by-step because that's what episode 2 was. So if you haven't listened to that yet, go back and listen to that. I do want to call out a few highlights, though, which is, number one, that first... So I just published this last week. It was an update to what I did a year ago. So I'm calling this now the 2026 edition because I'm sure there'll be a 2027 edition and 28 edition. But it's amazing if I look back at what changed since I published the first version a year ago versus the version that I'm talking about now. First of all, I think the first version was sort of directionally correct, but my timelines were way off. We maybe even talked about this in the first episode, that the way I thought I would be working with AI in that first roadmap, I said, this is how AI is going to be in our worlds in like 2027 and beyond. And by January this year, 6 months ago, Dave, you and I were both living it. That was that second brain, cognitive extension, and that sort of thing. And so, the quick version, the first step, the first phase of using AI is you're kind of using it where you're just asking questions and getting back answers. That's how most of us begin. The second phase is I'm not just asking for answers, but I'm using it as a thinking partner. So I'm kind of ideating and chewing on ideas and like processing and analyzing things with it. And then the third phase is that cognitive extension or second brain, where it truly becomes a knowledge corpus that's an extension of all the work you do. And then the fourth phase is where you take that knowledge corpus and the AI models and the way you're interacting with it, and you start connecting it into your applications. So now your second brain, your AI system, doesn't just have access to like your knowledge and your thinking and your documents, but it can actually connect into business systems, pull data, write data, update, kind of connect into all of the things. So, and I'm not going to go beyond the phases. You can listen to last week's show. But
what I will say is, what was really interesting is what the difference a year makes. I think that a year ago, the predictions you were making were, they were forward-looking and they were optimistic, and I think you weren't wrong in any way, shape, or form. But the speed at which some of those predictions became true was what changed. And what I would say as well is that how I watched that episode and I found it really useful because for me, what solidified for me is in 2025, I guess I was looking at it from the perspective of we're not there yet. I was looking at this as almost like a ladder in that you start at the bottom and you work your way up and you're trying to get to the peak, to the summit of the mountain to get to stage 7. And what occurs to me now is that just how the ladder analogy is true to a point. Through step 1 and step 2, you're moving up through those steps and you're not looking back. But once you get to step 3 and you are really using it as a cognitive extension, that's not something you ever get past. That becomes the sort of the foundation of all future things you're doing. And when we look at the other phases, they're ways that augment what you're doing in phase 3. They automate things. They free up your time and perspective so you can live in phase 3, because that's really, the value that you're bringing is the cognition piece.
I like that. The shape is different. It's not a ladder. It's a T shape. It's like a palace on the hill. You got to take a few steps to get there. But once you have your palace, you're expanding what happens within that space. It's interesting because a big framing change that I made between last year and this year was, I think the first version of this was really focused on what AI could do. Like at phase 1, AI is going to do this. At phase 2, AI is going to do this. At phase 3, AI is going to do this. And I mean, with AI technology being new, at least in this instantiation of it for knowledge workers, there was a lot of sort of like naysayers or skeptics around the technology, like AI can never do this, AI can never do that. And so it was really focused on the technology, and as the technology improves, what can it do? And the big change in perspective for the 2026 version of this framework is, instead of focusing on what AI can do, it's like focusing on what it means for you. Like, how does this change as a worker, how you do your job, and like just the impact of your daily life. So it's more about like impact on the worker versus the technology. And I'm thinking, as I'm saying this, I guess there's a parallel phase that could happen, which is like how it changes the way work operates. Because I'm thinking about the individual, which is sort of my own personal journey. I'm using AI like this, and I'm going through these phases, and I can kind of see the road ahead or the expansion of the palace ahead. But what happens to organizations when all of the workers are doing that? And what does that mean? I think that's actually something we talked about like a year ago, maybe, Dave. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the notion of like in a traditional organization, a hierarchy today, the people at the top who are getting paid the most, and they're getting paid the most because of their experience and because of their strategic thinking, and they need to be able to be allowed to do that, and they need all the barriers removed. So we give them all the tools to focus on just doing that. We give them executive assistants who handle their scheduling, the day-to-day, where they're supposed to be at any given time, and that allows them to direct that effort towards things. So we interact with their executive assistant rather than the person directly for a lot of the mundane day-to-day stuff. So where everybody now has these capabilities is that if everybody's working in this way, we can give everybody that executive assistant to handle the stuff. And what the reality of that means is that my cognitive offload, my executive assistant's probably going to talk to yours, and we may not be involved in trivial but meaningful decisions about where we're supposed to be, who's going to do what deadlines are, what the commitments are. That's going to be taken out of our hands, I think, largely. And we're just going to be freed up to think about the things that really move the needle for the business that we're working for.
I think you just outlined the topic of our next show, because I think
Ta-da.
let's take that as a commitment where I think you and I should work in the next month on sort of creating a similar framework as it applies to the organization, because it's also interesting that an organization is made up of a bunch of individuals, and all these individuals are going to be at different phases of this 1 to 7 step ladder palace framework. And we can sort of see like a utopian future. Like, imagine when every worker has a second brain. Imagine when every worker's second brain is connected into all the IT systems. But what happens when like 5% of your workers are there, and 20% of your workers are just using the step before, and 80% of your workers, that math doesn't make sense, 75% of your workers are just using AI like a better Google. That's going to be a big organizational challenge, which we should dig into that. So we'll do that for next show. The other thing, and this will kind of lead us into the first main topic today. I realized also, as I was giving these speeches, it's one thing to sort of be a blogger, be a writer. We all work from home. We sit in our palace and pontificate in the world. Our tree.
There we go. It's just
I like
occurred
that.
to me.
I like the treehouse. It helps us feel like that actually goes great to like the roots of Citrix. One of the reasons I think that I know you and I, Dave, have talked about this over beers in the past. Like, we're still doing this Citrix thing after decades because the community is so strong. Our friends are met here. When we all got involved in Citrix in the 1990s, it was this kind of strange side thing. And it really did feel like we're just figuring this out together, banging things together. It's how you build a treehouse. I love it. But what I realized is when I got out of the treehouse and I went out into the world and started telling the story about the 7 phases, I recognized that everyone is on the journey independently, right? Like, I'm kind of on phase 3, transitioning into phase 4. I think most of the world is still on phase 1, etc. And whatever phase you're in, you understand, because that's where you are now. And you can kind of see the next phase in front of you, because it's like, okay, now imagine this. If you started change this, add this, and you can sort of nod along and people can follow along. But as soon as you get 2 phases ahead, now you're talking about Mars to people.
Yeah. And I can see exactly what you mean by that, because as someone who's firmly in phase 3 and operating in that way, when I look at the value that the future phases can bring to me, I'm thinking in terms of time I can get back to live in my treehouse. Whereas if you're maybe at phase 1, you would look at these phases down the road, and through like a blurry vision on the horizon, what you're actually seeing is, hang on a minute, that sounds like it's doing the work I'm supposed to be doing, and that's a threat.
I love your characterization of how AI becomes like an executive assistant. And it's, you can make an argument that if everyone had a really great executive assistant, that empowers them to spend more of their time focusing on the stuff that matters. By the way, I have a really great executive assistant, Unani. I want to shout out my executive assistant at Citrix. She's a human, and she's wonderful. But it's like,
we can't all be vice presidents and futurists, though, Brian. So I have to make do with what I can cobble together.
But with AI, I think we all can be vice presidents and futurists. Because it's not about, like, people focus so much on tasks and what do I do in my job, and if AI does these pieces of my job, it's going to do more and more, and sort of what's left for me. So that's actually what I want to talk about as my main topic in this show. And I'll just say where I'm living right now in this framework is phase 3, moving towards phase 4. So to back up for a second, and I'll throw a graph of this, a photo of this in the YouTube version. If you're listening on audio only, again, everything was outlined last week. But phase 1 is how most people use AI. You're just using it on the web. It's, you're prompting it, you're getting back answers. Phase 2 is you're starting to load in documents. Maybe you're using projects, maybe you're using CoWork, maybe you're using Notebook LM, and you're starting to have real conversations with it. Phase 3 is that second brain phase, which both Dave and I have written extensively on. And so I'm living where AI is like my second brain now. Dave, you are living where AI is like your second brain. And so we're using it for sort of a thinking partner for all of our thinking. And then phase 4 is taking that second brain, as I mentioned earlier, and connecting it into our applications. And so this, in my speech that I gave in that video last week, I left like call to actions for people. And I said, you have got to get to phase 3. You have got to get to using AI as a second brain. Because if there's one thing that I'm realizing, it's like I said, you can't really see more than one step ahead. So if you're still using AI in a very simple, better Google, or if you're still using kind of Notebook LM and you're not truly using it as a second brain, the things that I talk about when we talk about extending it into our applications, it sounds crazy. And I realize there's still a lot of skeptics online. I mean, we're on LinkedIn, we are watching YouTube videos, and so many people are still talking about there's no value in AI and it's all a scam and it's a bubble and it doesn't really work and it's all, it's all malarkey. And I gotta say, I feel like anyone who's saying that is not using AI like a second brain. Because if you were, I just don't see how you can say there's no value to AI.
No. And similarly, it's the idea that there's no insight to be gained from talking to an AI. It's AI slop. It doesn't really. Having had deep conversations, which admittedly are often reflections of my ideas, just reflected back at me, but reframed slightly differently. It doesn't feel. It feels very insightful. It feels like the information I'm getting back in, I would struggle to get that same level of insight and perspective just by myself. It feels like more than just an autocomplete machine.
Yeah, and exactly. This model has existed for thousands of years in humanity. This is what a coach is. This is what a mentor is. This is what a therapist is. They're just reflecting back what you're saying and maybe helping you connect the dots that you didn't see. And if that's all AI does, fantastic. That is fantastic. So the reason
a really great coach as well is one that doesn't necessarily have to have subject matter expertise in your day job. You don't have to be a software engineer to be a great coach to a software engineer. You just need to be good at listening to what's said to you and then playing that back in a way that prompts introspection and growth for the person. And so yeah, I agree totally.
And so the thing I'm focusing on now in this conversation is that transition from phase 3 to phase 4. That's AI as a second brain. And as I said in last week's episode, you have to get there. You have to put your time in and really understand how this works. As a sidebar, it also helps you as a EUC professional just understand what the issues are going to be for organizations and complications and what works and what's easy and what's not easy and everything. So even if your company does not believe in this, even if your company does not allow it, that's fine. You can still get your own personal Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, doesn't matter, subscription, and start to use AI like a second brain. We have how-to guides. Dave's written a lot on this. We'll put links in the show notes. So everything that I'm going to say kind of next is assuming you're at the second brain and you're using AI in that way. And if what I'm saying sounds crazy, get to the second brain and sort of get into it and then listen to this again and start to think of it through that lens. So that's the setup for what I want to say. And so, as I said, the second brain phase, phase 3, is we're still inside our head. I mean, we're calling it second brain. And AI now, it's managing our knowledge corpus, it's managing our tasks to do, it's connecting ideas, story arcs. We're pulling in transcripts and it's like connecting ideas and helping us really think through our job. We're discussing things with it, but it's all still thinking. And the transition from phase 3 to phase 4 is the transition from thinking to doing. Or maybe I should say, to your treehouse analogy, we're adding doing. We're not stopping thinking. because that's
Branching out.
yeah.
Sorry,
Oh my
that's
gosh, Dave.
terrible.
No, I'm using
I'll
this.
leave now.
I'm using
Sorry.
this. I have a little. I'm gonna make a Lego tree. I have a little tree house back here. um, I, I I love a good analogy. Um, but
If
it's true
only this
because
was one. Carry on.
you know the it's a good point though, because if humans are paid the money to think and AI does your thinking for you, then why do you need a job? Why do you need a human? Isn't AI going to do all that? And I'm saying AI is not doing the thinking for you. AI is your coach and your thinking partner and just your executive assistant. And then that's phase 3. And then phase 4, we are adding on the ability for AI to actually do things in the world. The analogy, by the way, this is where the claws come in. So you hear about like open claw and all these types of things, and the idea is you have a brain and you have claws, and claws without a brain, like what can they do? So
Damage.
yes, there is where your AI deleted, your production database and the backups in 9 seconds or whatever. But I think for me, so I'm sitting squarely in phase 3 right now, and I'm just starting to connect into phase 4 and connect my AI into the world to do things. I think that's where you are also, Dave. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm branching out into that a little bit. Very early stages for me, though, yeah.
So
Because it needs to be done right, and I'm not yet at the stage where I'm comfortable enough with what I'm asking to be done to just delegate huge chunks of work.
yeah, we have both. I mean, with decades of actual enterprise IT experience, we want to do this very slowly, especially when it starts touching things and doing things. But so this is where I want to kind of hold this conversation now a little bit, where we are, I've got my second brain and I'm starting to branch out into the world. And so that's AI entering the world. It's the claws, it's the agents you hear. Like, this is AI agents. Now AI is starting to do things. And so there's a lot of talk and a lot of conversation online around what happens when you let AI do things. Like, it's about agents, and you give it workflows and you help automate specific parts of your job. And that is sort of the main narrative. And what I want to say is, I think that main narrative is wrong. I believe it's a mistake. There's this vision. By the way, if you go back through my blog history, I wrote exactly what I'm saying now as here's how to think about it. So, like, that was my perspective a year ago. I think that was sort of everyone's perspective a year ago. Now that I have the 7-phase framing and like this like second brain framing, I realized, oh, that is not the right framing. But I think it makes sense that we started thinking that, oh, you should use AI to automate a bunch of tasks for you, and AI can be a better, workflow machine. That's what we all thought back then. I got past that. You got past that. But I think you're still hearing a lot of that in the world because, again, most of the world is not at the second brain phase yet. They're still in phase 1 and phase 2. And so if you don't have the second brain and you don't really understand how this all fits together, you're going to say, oh, well, AI is an agent. Agents can do things autonomously. So let me take that and apply it to my current model that I know. Especially in our world, we've had agents for 20 or 30 years. They're called RPAs, robotic process automation. And the idea is, especially for task-based workflows, there's some process that happens over and over and over again. And instead of paying a human to drag a mouse and click things around and transform documents and move data between system A and system B, we create an agent. We create an RPA to do that for us automatically. And the narrative from a year ago, the narrative that I gave a year ago, the narrative that everyone is talking about now, which I think is wrong, is, hey, every job, even knowledge worker jobs, are just a series or a collection of tasks. So some tasks are difficult and challenging, some tasks are simpler and easier. AI is getting better and better, the harnesses are getting better and better, so the path to AI Utopia, let's say, is look at your job, figure out what all your tasks are, figure out what you can automate today. Automate this task. Okay, great. Now I don't have to do that. It frees up more time. Now automate this task. Now automate this task. And the message, which again, I believe is wrong, is you just automate more and more of your tasks, more and more workflows of your job. And then eventually you sort of automate everything and you are in AI Utopia and AI has changed the world. And I believe a lot of people are trying to do that today, which is why the narrative is AI ROI is not there. It's just a waste of money. It's not really working on things. And so the idea that you're going to use AI to create all these little workflows and, like the idea that knowledge workers are going to fire up some kind of AI agent studio and identify tasks and do this and build it. I mean, this has been available for decades and it
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Absolutely. The reason why RPA hasn't replaced people is because you need to put a lot of work in up front to define the exact parameters of the workflow that you're automating, and you need to remove judgment from that workflow entirely. And I think what the fallacy is that, oh, well, now we don't need to know exactly as much as much explicit detail about that workflow because the AI can apply some judgment in there, so therefore we can get to the outcome with less effort up front. The reality is, though, is that without the right information, without the right context, that judgment will be flawed. And when we look at an average workflow to replace, say, even a very scripted job, that human judgment plays a huge role in how to do that job well, and that's something that isn't easily replicable. So you can't go from RPA to just replacing that with AI and then that rolling it out to everybody, because it's more, it's a flawed premise that you can just automate and replace.
Yeah, and I agree completely. And I want to add a point of clarification too. RPA absolutely has a role in the future.
Oh yeah.
And AI is going to make RPA better. You will be able to use RPA to enhance with AI to automate more workflows than you did before when it didn't have AI. So you can take sort of these contained environments and apply some AI logic to help you with some routing and these kinds of things. So I believe RPA has a place. I believe AI helps with RPA. I believe that the future for RPA is very bright and AI is very helpful there. But again, that's a separate thing that I'm talking about. There are tasks that knowledge workers do, and it depends on your job. In my role as a futurist, I might not have a lot of automated tasks, but within the marketing organization at Citrix, we have a lot of workers who are all classified as knowledge workers who do have tasks they do. Take this campaign, put it in here, make this. There are tasks that people do as part of their jobs, which maybe could be enhanced with AI, and maybe AI could help them build an automation that does those tasks for them. So I'm not saying that the idea of AI plus RPA and task automation for knowledge workers, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that's not the main event. That's still focusing on, as I talk about, the 20% visible portions of knowledge work. And if I can have AI and RPAs and automations and agents help me with that, super. But there's so much of knowledge work that is just the stuff that's in our brain and the thinking time and what I've been calling the staring out the window and looking at birds time that is just so different and so unique, and it's not repeatable enough that you can sort of task automate it. But AI still has a good value there, and that value is not to replace you as a human is thinking. The way I've been framing it is like this. So if we're at the second brain, where we're using AI as a thinking partner, and now I want to go to phase 4, where I'm starting to extend my AI out into the world, the sort of next step I want to do is I want to connect AI into all my applications. And that actually ties back to the conversation we had in the first episode on like why I believe the way that AI is going to enter the knowledge work world is by using the same front door that all your human workers use, and the same security settings and application delivery and application publishing. Your whole Citrix workspace governed environment does a great job governing AI workers, just like it does human workers. But you need to connect it to everything. And the reason that is if I think about how I'm using AI now as a second brain, like I can use some of our account strategists that we have within Citrix. They probably have to do like a monthly account review with their manager. So maybe they have 10 accounts, and it's like, okay, here's my account review. And in talking to them, I learned that they spend a lot of time, a lot of days preparing this, because you have to go through like, okay, first account, here's the company, what am I doing, what's the update? I have to check, was that contract signed? That's in the contracting system. I have to check, what our help desk system, are there any open tickets? I have to check our like call notes. We have like multiple workers on different accounts. What are they doing? What's the current status of things? Check, all different things, as well as I have to check. Okay, I have email conversations. There's some meeting transcripts. I talk to them in Outlook, and it's just using my brain, talking to different things. And so, to me, this is why phase 4 exists. This is why we take our second brain of AI at phase 3 and connect it into the world. I want to connect it into all the applications so that I can just talk with my AI and say, okay, let's look at customer number 1. I had a call with them, and I think we're trying to schedule a second call, and I feel like they had a support ticket, but that's probably been resolved. But let's make sure there's not any other ones there. So the AI, through its skills, which we've written about in the past, it'll have skills to know, well, here's your like CRM system, here's your ERP system, here's your ticketing system, here's where these things are, here's the managers that also have access to the account that we should check with. And so I can just sort of talk through my AI, and it's connected into all the applications, and it can pull data from all of those applications. And also, it can write back and just sort of help me build up that big picture for that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am an account technology strategist that's been in exactly that position. I took an account over earlier this year, very recently actually. And due to the changes in account team, the system wasn't updated to show that this was my account anymore. So an account review got scheduled for this account that I wasn't invited to. And I found out an hour before the meeting that and this is a meeting that as the ATS, I have to present on. So I was able to take all the random thoughts I put into my vault, take all the meeting transcripts for the handover that I'd done from the previous ATS. And I was able to get a synthesized look, what's the current snapshot of where we are? And I was able to take that to the call, and it was my thinking, it was the thinking of the previous ATS that got, look, this is the current situation, this is where we are, these are the risks, this is what we're doing now, these are the things that the customer needs from us. And I was able to go and give a really comprehensive update at very little notice, just by pulling together all the pieces of information that already exist across the business. And you're right, we need to find a way of bringing these things together, and it will have unexpected results. Like, I think a perfect example of this is Amazon and AWS. AWS didn't come about as Amazon saying, do you know what, let's do a cloud service and sell. This is a good way of making money from, because let's start this business up. It started off from an ethos of how to run an IT environment, in that every single service, from storage to compute to networking, were all made to consider themselves commercial services that they provided to consumers. And those consumers were the different parts of the organization. They all had to interact with each other in a standard way, that they could track who was using what and account for it. It was by putting the framework in and making all of those services addressable in a very uniform way, they were able to operate their business efficiently. And then somebody said, oh, hang on a minute, now we have this platform, we could use this same mechanism and sell those unneeded capacity to customers, and we could come up with another use case. And I think the same will be true. We need to treat all our data sources as commercial products within our business. They need to be made available to the users, because information that isn't available to the users that in an appropriate way is a waste of time, because decisions will be made without it. And that's probably the worst thing that could happen. We're paying for storage costs, we're paying for a line of business application to store this information, and somebody's making a critical decision without the right context.
And that really ties back to what we talked about in the first episode, where this is why AI really needs to have access to all the applications and data sources that the human workers have access to. And today's AI can use APIs, it can connect via MPC, it can operate web browsers, it can operate desktop environments. And if you want to have workers that are extending their second brain to where they can really dig into all the systems that they need to, you have already done that. And so that to me is this main takeaway, is when you think about AI agents running in environments, don't think about it as a framing of it's all these workflows I'm going to automate. Think about it as you have your second brain, you have your workers working with AI as this sort of coaching partner, and then that whole environment connects into everything, and it expands its universe and makes its universe bigger. So when I think about things like OpenClaw, for example, you have Jensen Huang talking about every company, every enterprise needs an OpenClaw strategy. It's not so you can automate workflows, it's so you can extend the second brains into every data source and application source, system record that the humans need. The AI needs that too. Which that I feel like this tees up what you want to talk about, Dave, as your main topic today.
Yeah, fantastic. So this is the thing that I've been going through for the past several months actually is that what started off almost as a skunk works, what's possible, and by the nature of needing to work in an agile way with the tools at hand, started off on a personal laptop with some notes connecting to LLMs and figuring out the model and what works. You reach a point where you can only go so far with that sort of off the books thing, because I have a notebook here and I write down thoughts in this notebook, and the stuff that was going into my personal AI system was kind of just this, but now addressable by stuff. And there was huge parts of my job where I was able to apply the nuggets of information that I'm putting in my second brain and get huge returns and see that this was working well. But in the piece that I wrote about this last week, I kind of said there's a glass ceiling in that the really valuable, interesting stuff that you would want to work with in this way. I'm kind of looking at it through the glass ceiling. The stuff like the account review stuff that I was talking about now. What I really need is access to all the company information and all the systems that do that. And on a personal system, there's just no way I can do that, because, or if I was to do that, I could do that, but it would be against every employee conduct thing in most enterprises, I would think.
Your glass ceiling being that there's that barrier between your AI system and like all the data and apps that are in the company, but you can't connect those together. It's like videos of like a young kitten walking into a glass window and not understanding why they can't go through it.
Exactly. It's like my job is, let's say, I'm able to, on a personal system, I'm able to sort of have AI help me with maybe 20 or 30% of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, because it's the stuff that's appropriate for me to just take from my brain, put out, and have it played back to me. But to get to the really useful stuff, like show me all the customer support cases for this customer for the last 12 months. What are the trends? What can we do to get ahead of, maybe do they need a health check? And if so, what subject should they? All of that information is sensitive information that shouldn't exist just out there in the world. It should be secured in enterprise systems. So we've been working on an initiative to bring these experiments into the business. So right now, that looks like a secure execution environment. So VDI desktops running in Citrix's system, where I can run a copy of this brain, and it has been transformative. So the example I gave earlier, that happened sort of week 2 of working in this way, just night and day. Just by having all that information, I was able to turn up to a meeting and be better prepared. So now I have the ability to do this securely. I am just seeing it's by a factor of 10 better now, because I have more sensitive information. It's stored appropriately. I can sleep at night, but I can smash that glass ceiling and start doing more interesting work. But even then, it's still a progression, I think, because right now, while I have a nice, secure sanction place to put all this information, by and large, it's still a manual input from me. I was like, oh, this would be cool. I'm going to put this in. And over time, that stuff compounds and it can be reused and whatever. But the next stage is getting an enterprise to see all those data sources as those products that we need to be able to subscribe to in a appropriate context way. and do that. So that's kind of the next progression of this for me. Is now I'm in here. Now I've got the security clearance upgrade, and my second brain can know more. How can I automatically bring in those contacts? So how can I connect it to my email and the stuff that's in the Microsoft tenant through, say, like Work IQ, for example? How can I look at our CRM system and what MCP connections can be made available to me and my second brain so I can ask the questions about customer trends without having to import the data myself manually? And now I'm in here and I'm seeing the great things that's possible. I'm more eager than ever to, like, who do I need to speak to make this happen? And that's kind of the conversations that I think we're having. And these are the conversations that I think all enterprises will be having. When those first initial users move in to these secure tenants to be able to do stuff, the first thing they're going to do is like think, wow, what the world has opened up to me. What can I bring in? And I think we're going to see a lot of requests like this.
You hit the nail on the head when you said, who do I talk to? Because, we can climb the ladder from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 sort of on our own as individuals in our private consumer capacity. But at some point you have to transition that, when you get to the second brain, transition that into your organization, or create something like that. Maybe not a transition into your organization. I've figured out how to do that. You have figured out how to do that. So both of our second brains, as you mentioned, are living within Citrix. And now we want to connect our second brains to all these business systems to go to phase 4. But it's above our pay grade, as you say. We have to talk to our CIO, our COO, our CISO. And even though we have, Citrix Secure Workspace, and it can access our web apps and our modern applications and our desktop applications, it's like, what agent is running? What is it seeing? What policies are set up? We probably want to have separate user accounts for the agent, so it doesn't have like the same permissions that I have. Like, I want to give it read access to systems. I don't maybe trust it to write into these systems yet. And so it really expands beyond what the individual can do, and requires IT. And in a lot of cases, it's even bigger. It doesn't just require IT. It requires some real leadership, sponsorship within the company. Like, this is a CEO, like CHRO, CISO level conversation. This is not the IT department or the Citrix admins who can make this happen.
The top-down message that needs to come from the C-level is that data is the lifeblood of our organization. And data that is in a silo and locked away is data that is not being used to its full potential. It's data that's not being thought with. And what's the point in even having it if we don't? We need to solve this problem. We need to make data available appropriately. I'm not saying give everybody access to everything. I'm saying put the mechanisms in place so it can be a consumer-like service and be consumed in an appropriate way by everybody that needs it. That needs to be that sort of like the number one priority, I think, on CIOs' agendas.
And I think a number one priority for those of us who care about the evolution of knowledge work, whether you are an end user within your organization, whether you're in the IT or the EUC department, whether you're a partner, whether you're a Citrix colleague listening to this, it's to understand that this story and what's happening is a lot bigger than us. But what I would say, I touched on this last week in the episode that was the talk. What I take away from this is there's a lot of work for IT to do, in a good way. This whole notion of, AI comes in and replaces all of our jobs. I mean, so much, even within the lens of end user computing, so much of the skills that we have, like think about, securely delivering workspaces, but disk image layering, application virtualization, policy management, policy layering, profiles, all that stuff still applies. Now, it might be like, now we're taking knowledge nuggets in our libraries and our context vaults, and we're merging them together from this one and that one and this one. I've got my department level, my company level, my peer level. I've got mine. I'm hooking agents into there. What agents are running? What are they seeing? What access do they have? How do I audit that? How do I manage that? This is our world of end user computing, administrators, architects, and engineers. I feel very confident that, it's not like AI makes all it disappear, as we talk about a lot for, big sort of regulated industrial type companies, their systems are not going away. How they're used will evolve, but there's going to be a lot for us to do as IT professionals.
Absolutely. And kind of coming full circle back to, I think, the start of this, where we were talking about the misconceptions, and there's a conception that AI is failing, and a lot of AI initiatives are failing, and they're not delivering value. I think, to sum up in a sentence why that is, it's that the misconception is that AI is the product that needs to be implemented. It isn't. It's the data that you already have. That's the product that needs to be fixed so that the platform of AI can consume it in a meaningful way. And that's when we start to unlock value from these AI initiatives.
I feel like that is a perfect moment to end this month's show on. To all of you listening, thank you so much for giving us your time. A shout out to, I guess, Dave for teaching me about the second brain. And I want to remind people that both Dave and me have published public versions of our second brains. We'll put links in the show notes. Dave is at davebrear.ai. Mine is at brianmadden.ai. What that means is you can take your AI system, even if you're just using it in phase one as prompting, you can click the little connect button, connect to an MCP server, type in the URL of either one of us, and it takes our entire corpus of knowledge and makes that available so that you can ideate and discuss with your AI on your projects and bringing in our perspectives. These second brains are updated continuously. I'm sure by the time you listen to this show will be incorporated into there. And so, my last takeaway for people is you got to get to stage 3. You got to start using AI like a cognitive extension, like a second brain. If your company does not support this, that's fine. Don't break any rules, of course, but start using it in your personal life and just start putting ideas and thoughts and papers you're reading and things you're thinking about. And then once you understand how powerful that can be, then you can become an advocate for talking to folks at your company to figure out how to connect it into your existing environment. So with that, thank you so much. Dave, as always, thank you for your time. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you again next month.